everybody. Welcome to another episode. I'm Mike Monticello.
I'm Mike Quincy.
And I'm Steve Ellick.
So today we're going to be talking about what I think is a pretty interesting vehicle, and that's the redesigned 2023 Land Rover Range Rover Sport. You know, we spend most of our time here at Consumer Reports driving, evaluating, and testing kind of more mainstream vehicles, the kind that, you know, us and everyone else is out there buying every day. But the Range Rover is a little more upper crust, you know, so I think it's going to be fun to talk about and to kind of give our first impressions of what we think of it so far. And to be clear, for those of you that are kind of new to the podcast, the fact that we bought this vehicle because it's going to go into our test program, that's one of the differentiators between us and other media outlets that also evaluate and test vehicles.
Always a good idea to remind.
Yeah, because unlike most outlets that get the vehicles provided to them by the automaker, this one, we buy all of ours. So there's no chance for the automaker to, you know, maybe soup it up or something.
It's exactly what a consumer would buy.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's why we did that. And that's what this is. This is going to be going through our fully regimented testing program once we get the 2,000 break-in miles that we do with all of the test vehicles that we buy. So what's going on with the Range Rover Sport for 2023? And actually quite a lot. And it starts with the powertrains. There's a lot of them to choose from. There's two versions of a 3-liter inline-six cylinder that's not just turbocharged, but also supercharged and has a mild hybrid setup. The base P360 has 355 horsepower. The P400 has 395 horsepower. And then there's also a 434 horsepower plug-in hybrid that they call the P440E, based on the same powertrain, but has a claimed 48-mile electric-only range, which is pretty good. And then there's, you know, the big daddy, as you might call it, and that's the 4.4-liter twin turbocharged V8 with a massive 523 horsepower. And also, an all-electric version is likely to join the lineup for 2024. So, you
know what's funny about this rundown of all these engines?
Yeah,
almost reminds me of like American cars, like
back in the day,
in the 60s or 70s, when there's all these different variations, all these different engines, and it's like it's hard to believe that any manufacturer would be going back to that.
Yeah,
it's a lot to choose from. I mean, even within like one engine, you have a turbocharger, a supercharger, and a mild hybrid system. That's a lot going on.
In case you don't have enough boost in your life.
Yeah, exactly. So besides the powertrains, there's also the cabin's been updated, a little more modern looking, new infotainment system, some nicer materials. So for the Range Rover Sport, pricing starts at $83,000 for the base SE P360, which is what we bought. But with $7,695 in options, including some special 22-inch wheels and a black contrast roof, plus the $1,475 destination charge that Land Rover charges on all Range Rover Sports, the total cost of our test vehicle is $92,170. What do you think about that, Quince?
I think it's insane. Well, I mean, it's what the market calls for. I mean, if you're going to be signing up for any Land Rover, you got to be ready to write a pretty hefty check. And I know we're gonna get into that more later. But it is a big chunk.
Right. And now, some background. In truth, we didn't actually love the last Range Rover Sport. It had, kind of a stiff ride, overly raucous exhaust. It was almost like it didn't know how much sportier it should be than the regular Range Rover, right? So there were some things about that we didn't like, and maybe they made it better this time around. Well, guess what? This panel right here is going to tell you guys and gals whether it is any better. So, but first, I have a personal question for you, Mike Quincy, or Quince, or Quincelicious, as I like to call you. When someone who's looking to a Range Rover Sport, or say a Porsche Cayenne, a sporty luxury SUV, what do you think is most important to them? Sporty driving dynamics, like comfort and quiet, a stylish exterior, or honestly, is it really mostly about the badge?
I think it's about the badge.
You do?
Yeah. Because, if you want real sporty, I think you do go for a Porsche or an Audi. If you want something more practical, you might go for something that is traditionally more reliable, which again, we'll get to later. Or if you want to save a little bit of money, you would just, go for a lower tier vehicle. So I think you've always wanted a Land Rover. You always thought they were cool. You wear a lot of khaki clothes and you think you're going on a safari. I don't know. I mean, and they have some panache to them. They have a presence.
Right.
and they don't look like everything else out there. And so I think you're probably going to be the only one in your neighborhood that has one. I think that's, and that isn't to disparage the owners. I think this is a lot of money,
right?
So you want to get what you want, but I would say it's more of a badge thing, and considering the model, it isn't as much a hardcore off-roader as some of the other ones in the lineup.
Yeah, like the Defender. That's maybe you'd be wearing the khakis more with the Defender or something like that. But you just mentioned styling, though. Let's touch on that real quick. We don't normally talk about styling here at Consumer Reports because we're really all about the driving and the reliability and all that. But dang, tell me this thing doesn't look pretty good. It's so smoothed out. It looks like a concept car, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think they nailed it. The styling, I mean, it just looks, and just like Quincy says, it doesn't look like everything else on the road. It's unique. It's something different, and it just looks great.
Yeah. And now, styling aside, what's it like to drive? And let's talk, Steve. Let's talk. Powertrain. Engine, transmission, ride and handling. Do you like driving this thing?
I love driving this thing. I think, like you said, the previous generation wasn't exactly great. It was a little too sporty, or trying to be sporty, and in that kind of making it a little bit rough, the ride.
Yeah.
But this new one is absolutely fantastic to drive. I think they nailed the sport component of it. It handles very well for such a big vehicle. But yet it's still comfortable while handling so well. And the powertrain, I think, is so smooth. I mean, I didn't realize that it had a mild hybrid, a supercharger, and a turbocharger, all these things when I drove it. I just got in it and I was like, this is powerful. There's power on demand whenever you want it. Plenty of passing power. Just, yeah, I enjoyed it. Overall, it was a very fun vehicle to drive.
Quince, there's something special about an inline-six, right? I mean, talk about that like what makes an inline-six so special. BMW obviously has been using them for years and years, but
it's the smoothness.
Yeah.
It is a tractable. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
It's responsive. It's a very linear power delivery. I know you had some low speed issues with it.
I have a lot of issues, but plus there's some low speed things with this. Yeah.
But I think this powertrain is an absolute gem, especially when you're under boil and you're just cranking along on the highway. You want to go past somebody. You just put your foot into it just a little bit, and it like leaps forward.
And it sounds great.
It does sound good.
It's a very, very refined powertrain, and it's nice to see that the inline sixes haven't all gone away, because a lot of the BMWs, they're all turbo 4-cylinder.
That is true. That is true. So yeah, you mentioned that I did have I noticed some initial delays off the line. Like there's a little bit of initial delay off the line I noticed, and then the power comes on a little abruptly once it gets going, which I think hurts the refinement a little bit. But I do agree with you guys. It sounds good. The transmission upshifts really smoothly. I wasn't wowed by the amount of power. I mean, this is a big vehicle to move, and 355 horsepower, believe it or not, isn't that much when it weighs this much. I did like it. I just thought maybe it would feel even faster. For $92,000, I thought it would be a little faster. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, and we talked about how this the kind of the label, the Land Rover label. And I got to tell you, I was so ready to not like this car at all, because I was thinking back to our tested Evoque, the Velar, the last Discovery Sport, all of those models completely underwhelmed me. And I was like, why? Why do these things cost so much? They total just blobs. And then I drove our Defender 110 SE. I'm like, I love this car. And when I'm driving our Range Rover Sport now, I get the same kind of sense of character, whether it's the steering or just the presence of it sitting up high. The visibility isn't horrible, not as good as the 110,
right?
But it's like, now for me, it's like two Land Rovers in a row I'm liking, which the previous ones, like, oh, forget it.
Yeah.
So it's like there are two different tiers of Land Rover. There's the smaller ones that aren't really that great to drive. Right. And then there are these, which, for $92,000, I would hope so, but it really is different.
I think these like this one, the regular Range Rover that we borrowed, that we got in a little while ago, which is also redesigned, they have just an aura about them And Steve, talk about like what is it like to drive them just down the highway? Like, I mean, in terms of comfort and quiet, I mean,
it is so quiet. Well, the Range Rover Sport is quiet.
Yeah.
Like to the point where you can't even be bothered by,
it
the
insulates
outside.
you from the outside world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then you drive that bigger Range Rover.
Yeah.
I know we're not really talking about that one this much, but that even goes beyond this Range Rover Sport and just how quiet it is. But I think you nailed it. That's a good thing that you mentioned about the character. Like there's character on these bigger ones, and the smaller ones, the Evoque, those don't really have that Land Rover character. But I mean, little things like that flip down armrest, I personally love that.
Did you use it?
Like
I couldn't make it work for me.
Yeah.
That's a very Land Rover
like that
thing
too.
that I love about it.
Yeah.
And like, a solid clunk on the door.
That's true. Yeah.
Just very.
So it's not all positive, at least not for me. Did you guys have any issues with the brake pedal feel? I found them a little bit touchy. I found them both touchy at low speeds, like in a parking lot when you first press on them, and then even at higher speeds, I'd press on it, and it initially would feel like it wouldn't do much, and then I'd get further into the stroke, and then it would come on too strong. Did you notice that at all, or am I out on Monty's Island?
No, I'm totally with you on that. The brakes, if this is the right term, they felt a little green to me, and I know they're obviously not green because we put a few hundred miles on it. The car already has almost 1,000 miles, 1,500 miles. We put 2,000 on them before we start testing them. So I know they've been driven, but they felt kind of touchy to me. And sometimes I think about that with our other test cars with the transmissions, because sometimes we talk about it's clunky and you wonder, is it going to get better over time?
And they do sometimes. Sometimes they
have to
learn.
Yeah.
Right.
And also sometimes they get worse, and that's terrible.
Yeah.
Over time, like they start getting 10, 15, 20,000 miles on them, and it's like, why is this thing clunkier than it was before? But that's another story. We'll talk about that. So Quince,
we're going to get to the rest of your the things that you don't like about it, though.
Just tell me this, Quince.
It's a list.
This is how amazing and super simple are the controls in this thing. Talk to me about the controls.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Is this maybe the worst part of the vehicle? The controls, infotainment system, and the rest of the controls?
Yeah. And it's a pattern of design that I've certainly been seeing with really expensive cars,
right,
whether it's Mercedes or the Lexus RXs,
yep,
and now this Defender.
Range Rover Sport.
This Range Rover Sport.
Whatever. There's honestly too many Land Rover models.
There's too many. Exactly.
And it confuses you because sometimes they're Range Rovers and sometimes they're Land Rovers. It's very confusing for a dum-dum like me.
And this is why we get along so well. So it almost seems like they go out of their way to make them complicated just because they can. Which is, to me, I'd say you designers, you got too much time in your hands. Come on, get down to something simple. But so yeah, it's beyond silly that you have to wade into the infotainment system with this car to adjust the lumbar support
on the seats. Yeah, that's crazy.
That's nuts to me, because if you're doing a road trip, you might do these little micro adjustments for the seats, and again, you might
all the time. You might do it several times.
And you saw me kind of like drop my hand down. And it isn't even the other seat controls aren't always where you expect them. They're going to be also. So
I did notice one thing interesting about that is if you touch the seat adjuster on the side of the seat, it brings up on the screen, which is still a little confusing. But
that actually bothers me.
Did it?
Well, because if I'm adjusting the seat control here, I really probably just want to move the seat forward or backward or tilt the leading edge up or down. I really don't want this thing to pop up. I get why it's saying, oh, hey, and there's more controls you can do here. But most of those should have been in right next to the seat anyway.
It's another distraction.
And actually, I think these are actually up on the door.
On the door panel.
Which Mercedes has been doing that for a long time. Just because Mercedes does it doesn't mean it's intelligent.
Right.
It's a dumb place up on the door.
Right. Why do some manufacturers take the worst aspects of other manufacturers' designs? It's like, how can we make them even worse?
Yeah.
Which I don't get.
Right.
But anyway, there's a couple of things that also was annoying for me about the controls. The cruise control buttons on the steering wheel, they're oddly labeled.
Yes.
They're unintuitive to use, and they require like this sequence. You have to do this one and then this one before it'll go. And I always get it wrong.
Yeah. Well, just for example, like most cruise control systems or adaptive cruise control, either one, you can hit set by either the minus speed or plus speed. This one, you have to hit I think, the plus speed.
Right.
So I would always hit the minus speed just to set it for some reason. And it would never, I'm like, why is it not turning on? Right. Something like that.
And you have to re-engage it every time you restart the car. Driving to the track today, I was in our little Honda HR-V, a very simple, inexpensive car. You turn the cruise control on once. When you go to restart it, it's ready for you again.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is hit the set button.
Right.
So you go from a simple approach to the controls to something like this. And again, it kind of baffles me as to why they have to do it, but yeah, they do it. And another thing, and I'm almost afraid to admit this.
Don't.
The first time I got
this is a safe zone.
The first time I got in the car, I was pulling it out of the garage in the main building.
Yeah.
And then I went to get out of the car to close the garage door. I couldn't find the interior door handle because it was black and it was like up high and it just blended in with the whole door panel. And Alex was in the garage. I said, Alex, I have an embarrassing question. I can't get out of this car.
Did he say climb through the window?
But it made me think, well, what do you do if you're a new driver or you're a passenger and there's like some panic situation? Yeah. We talked about this with some of the Lexus models, how it has the little button on the by the elbow rest and how it's not intuitive.
Right.
So, I mean, you live with the car every day. You're going to get used to the nuances of the controls. Yep. But for me, in the beginning, I was like, oh my gosh.
The thing about the infotainment system is like touchscreens can be done right. And like there are certain ways where you could do that. And it's not even like that's the issue. It's the organization of where everything is within that. Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, the processing speed of this unit is so slow that you click on something and there's like a little bit of a lag for it to get into it. That's the part that bothers me as well about it. So
I agree with both of you on all that. I also think the climate controls are just wonky. I get what they were trying to do, like use these knobs to be able to do multiple things like adjust the temperature and adjust the fan speed. But you have to you're pushing in to do the seat heater and then you're pulling out to do the, manual fan speed mode. And it's just, there's too much pulling, pushing, trying to remember which way to do it. And then things like the engine stop start system, that button to be able to turn that system off so that it doesn't turn the engine off every time you come to a stop is in the touchscreen instead of on the center console. So I think those kinds of simple things should be within easy reach of the driver because that can be annoying to not be able to find it.
And the normal Consumer Reports advice to a potential buyer is spend a lot of time with your salesperson going over all these controls because there might be some workaround or there might be a hint. Oh yeah, you'd think you're going to do it this way, but actually you do it this way. Like,
true.
Oh, okay. If you didn't tell me that, I would have known it.
Right. So, Steve, you touched on one of you intelligent people touched on reliability earlier.
I brought up reliability, which
and
is, kind
so
of
let's talk about that real quick because you're one of our main data crunchers of all of our survey data that we get every year. Where are we with Land Rover reliability historically and also with brand new cars?
So the Range Rover Sport and most Range Rovers, we don't have sufficient sample for reliability. So that's why we typically go to a brand score. And Land Rover is not very reliable historically. In past survey years, in general, it's probably going to be pretty unreliable.
So it's not going to get a great predicted reliability score.
Most likely not.
Okay. All right. So that's kind of a bummer. So let's see. Final thought for you guys. And Steve, I'm going to start with you. If you had the money to buy this Range Rover Sport and you were in the market for a sporty SUV like this, would you get it? Or is there something else you would get instead of this one?
So I guess that depends because it depends what car I've had before this in this situation. For example, I'd probably get a Porsche Cayenne over this car. But say I already had a Porsche Cayenne and I wanted to mix it up, I probably would buy this for the money.
I think that's cheating.
No. Okay, but now why would you get the Porsche Cayenne over the Range Rover Sport?
It's the Porsche Cayenne is just the perfect sporty SUV. It does everything correctly. It handles well. It's fast. It has, the Porsche interior and the fit and finish and it's just all around well-rounded. And Porsche is typically relatively reliable. I mean, it's
a smart choice.
Yeah.
And also a fun choice. Mm-hmm. Quince, what about you? Range Rover Sport or something else entirely?
So yeah, a little reminder for our audience: $92,000. That is a big chunk of change. But so if I want a sporty driving experience, and Steve, you're probably gonna hate me for this, I'm gonna go for a sports sedan or a sports car. Okay, the term sporty SUV to me is like, really? I mean, I get it. Yeah, the Cayenne is engaging.
He does this to just,
the X5 is
confuse us.
engaging. Okay, so I think you got to pick your compromises. And if I had to get a Land Rover, that's a big if for me. It would be the Defender 110. It's trucky. I get it.
So you go complete polar opposite.
Yeah,
in a
well,
sense.
because
you still get an SUV.
Because, well, again, I guess we're kind of assuming that you need this kind of utility in your life. Whether your kids are young, like Steve's, or kids are older, like me, whatever. But I just the whole idea of sporty SUV
doesn't make sense.
Just
I get
silly.
I understand that.
Because I as we talked about, the character of the Defender 110 was awesome. I'm spending about $75,000 equipped the way that I probably would have done it, but 18 miles per gallon is a real bummer. But since I'm not really interested in something sporty, and I tend to go more to the reliable, I'm taking a Lexus GX.
Okay.
Because it's still sort of elegant. It has a nice interior. It has a sweet V8 engine. Yes, lousy 17 miles per gallon, which kills me.
It's fantastic off-road.
I'm on a fuel economy kick right now. So all of these models really are bummers when it comes to fuel economy for me. But I am going with the reliability. I mean, it's practically indestructible. A luxury model is under $70,000. So again, I'm saving about $20,000 over our Range Rover Sport.
Yep.
I know it's old school. I know it's like
You're
low
old school.
tech.
It makes
I'm
sense.
old school. Nobody's going to tell you that more than super producer Dave Abrams.
He tells us that every day.
Exactly. And I got the gray hairs to prove it. So that's why I'm going. It's going to be one of the last vehicles you ever own.
Yeah, I like it.
I'm guessing it's gonna last longer with fewer amounts of money to keep it running than anything from Land Rover.
Yep. Good choices. But for me, if I wanted to save some money, right, and not spend $92,000, I'd go with the Genesis GV80. Okay,
great.
And because
Good one.
with the turbo V6, it starts at $63,000. So you're saving some good amount of money there, and it's a great driving vehicle. Now, if I have plenty of money, okay, enough to buy this Range Rover Sport, maybe a little more, I'd go with the BMW X5M. Starts around $108,000, but you're getting so much more vehicle. I mean, it's a 600 horsepower turbocharged V8. Yes, please. So that's what I would go with.
That's tempting.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a lot more about the 2023 Land Rover Range Rover Sport up on our website, consumerreports.org, including a first drive that's written by a pretty obscure, little-known author, but go check that out anyway. And, of course, don't forget to stay tuned for our road test results when we are done with getting this thing through our whole program. So don't forget to check that out. And now we're going to move on to Quincy's favorite section of the segment of the show every week.
That's mine. I mean, almost everyone that's on this awesome podcast loves the questions.
Which is audience question of the week. Folks, don't forget to send us those questions, comments, 30-second video clips to
TalkingCars at iCloud.com.
Yes. See, that's why he's here.
TalkingCars at iCloud.com.
Yeah. Quincy and I actually forget that quite often. But anyway, so definitely let us know, folks, what you're thinking about. And we do really love the video questions. So take a little time and send us some of those. So today's question comes from Bill in Delray Beach, Florida. And Bill says, the base Lexus NX has been unchanged since 2015. Drivetrain, electronics, equipment, etc. You often recommend waiting a few years before purchasing a new model to allow for the kinks to be worked out. I bought a 2017 NX. Since your 2016 auto issue, all NXs were rated superior until 2021, when the 2017 was rated just average with reported problems in 9 areas for that year alone. Mine remains trouble-free. Why would a seemingly excellent car in the middle of its 7-year model run fall so far in reliability? And since my 2017 was manufactured in September of 2016, would it be included in the 2017 reliability review? Well, Bill, you're in luck because we have data crunching analyst expert Steve Ellick here. So, Steve, I'm going to throw it to you. Tell us what's going on with this reliability stuff.
So That's a great question. And reliability is interesting in that every year we get a survey from our members telling us how reliable their vehicles have been in the last 12 months. So every year there's new reliability results that come out. And so that changes. So that 2017 NX in the 2016 auto issue may have been based on reports that we had at the time. In the 2021 auto issue, that 2017 was about 4 years old. And another important thing to note about reliability and what happens in this case is models are compared to others of that model year. So when it slipped in the 2021 model year to what Bill said, down to average, that means really it's about equal to all other 2017 models. So it didn't really, I wouldn't say it got unreliable per se. It just kind of was equal to the sea of the other 2017 vehicles at the time.
So not as trouble-free in a sense?
It's possible that it took a couple years for some problems to come up. And we do see that happen occasionally, where you see some problems come up a couple years later and owners report that they had certain issues. Bill said there were 9 problem areas in the 2021 issue. I am happy to report that as we continue to get more data, and currently it is more reliable again. So I think it'll be okay, and the results just tend to change every year as we get new data.
See, that's the key component.
I think that's what people maybe don't understand.
Right. In understanding Consumer Reports reliability information, it is a little complicated. I mean, let's be fair. But every year it can change. Not guaranteed to change, but it can change year to year.
Yes.
And that's why I think, especially when it comes to like getting a used car, you're looking at like consistent model years of good performance in reliability data. And by that, it can change. The example that I always come back to is like the Chevrolet Corvette. Some years it's like, just like around average or so, or maybe below average. And it's always like wavering just a little bit. And it's never been as rock solid as like, a Corolla or a Camry or something like that.
Yeah. So
or
data,
Lexus GX. See, Lexus GX. There you go.
Data is dynamic. I mean, so what happens with this 2017 is it went from maybe, I don't know exactly, but maybe it went from above average to average. That may not be that big of a difference.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And now it's up again. So it's better to look at kind of the long history of how it's been.
Yeah. So if you're looking at the vehicle and has a lot of, single chevron down arrows or whatever, or double, then you probably want to stay away. But if it's kind of like a little bit here and there and around average, then it's probably okay.
Yeah, it's not like it went from a 5 to a 1.
Yeah, but what's interesting is the first part of his question. He talks about we recommend waiting a few years before purchasing a new model. Are there some brands maybe that you would consider you would take the risk and get the new? In other words,
I'll ask the questions. Are there some brands that you would be willing to take? I'm kidding.
The actual answer to that is, Lexus and Toyota, they have a very good history and track record of making reliable vehicles. Even during redesign, sometimes we do see that drop a little bit, but in general, they tend to be reliable. And then as that generation matures, it continues to get more and more reliable for the most part.
And we all like some models that are traditionally not so reliable. We talk about anything from Land Rover. I wonder if it's a fair. You throw this out to people. Well, if you really want the Range Rover Sport, lease it, because in the 3-year lease, anything that any problem you're having is going to be covered under warranty anyway. And once the lease is up, the warranty might be up, and then you just walk away from it. I wonder if you approach,
I think,
wanting cars, buying versus leasing in terms of their reliability.
Yeah, you still run the risk of the annoyance of having to bring it into the dealer if it is inherently somewhat unreliable from the beginning. Even if you lease it, you still have to get it fixed.
But you're not paying for it.
But at least you're not well, yeah, and you probably wouldn't be paying for it if you bought it. But you don't have, if you're trying to keep it for 10 years,
right?
Then you probably don't want to buy a vehicle that's inherently unreliable. Anyway, Lots of great information. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Quince. If you want to learn more about the cars and the topics that we talked about, you can click on the links in the show notes. Don't forget to send those questions, comments, 30-second video clips to talkingcars@icloud.com. This episode was produced by Dave Abrams and edited by Andrew Belize. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you all next week.